MLK event, Justice is Not Just Us. Hi, everyone. I am the Chief Operating Officer. My name is DeWanda Ricks, and this is the network BICT presents Justice is Not Us. We have a phenomenal guest speaker, an awesome moderator. So I will not hold this up. I will get right into introducing our moderator, and then our moderator will introduce our speaker for today. So today we have Mr. James E. Johnson Jr. James is a director of product management and development right here at AT&T. And although James was born in Philadelphia, he has Fly Eagles Fly. I'm just saying that because I'm feeling good about my Lions. But okay, he spent most of his formative years in Metro Atlanta, where he attended Georgia State and DeVry University. James earned a Bachelor of Science degree in Information Systems. James is responsible for leading a multi-billion-dollar Ethernet portfolio for AT&T. He has held his current role since 2019 and has more than 30 years of product, network, and operations experience in his career. James takes pride in giving back to his community. He has served on the National Board of Directors for the network. He has also led a chapter as a president. James has also served on the Junior Diabetes Resource Foundation Board to coordinate volunteer and sponsorship activities for AT&T in the Richmond, Virginia areas. He and his wife, Sabrina, have two sons and a daughter, James III, Lucas, and Brielle. He spends his free time reading and as a taxi driver for his children who play soccer and are practicing Taekwondo. Thank you, James, and welcome.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the welcome, DeWanda. I'd like to welcome Dr. Ferguson and all of our esteemed guests on this afternoon. And I'll start with a quick introduction of Dr. Ferguson, who, born in Albany, New York, is a native of Fayetteville, North Carolina, where he currently resides. So yeah, he travels across the country and the world, recreating words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and educating people on Dr. King's life and the philosophy of love, peace, and justice. Ferguson is a veteran sergeant of the U.S. Army and a former radio announcer and news reporter. I think you'll hear some of that in the discourse this afternoon. Recognized for his work with Martin Luther King, he's received 3 Presidential Volunteer Service Awards and was inducted into the Morehouse College MLK Board of Scholars in Atlanta. Dr. Ferguson is featured in the March 2nd, 2020 issue of Time magazine, where he was selected by Time to play the role of Dr. King for a virtual reality traveling exhibit of the March on Washington. He's the only individual ever licensed by the King estate and family to perform the copyrighted words of Dr. King. Dr. Ferguson currently serves as a consultant for the 400 Years of African American History Commission, the 400 YAAHC in Washington, D.C., and the MLK National Historical Park in Atlanta, Georgia. He holds degrees in ministry, divinity, theater, and film from Georgia State University and Morehouse School of Religion at ITC. Thank you, Dr. Ferguson, for joining.
Thank you kindly for having me. America is essentially a dream. It is a dream of a land where men of all races, of all nationalities, and of all creeds can live together as brothers. The substance of this dream is expressed in these profound words. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. One of the first things that we notice about this dream is its amazing universalism. It does not say some men, but it says all men. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. And whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. For some strange reason, I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be, and you can never be what you ought to be until I am what I ought to be. This is the way the world is made. This is the interrelated structure of reality. John Donne caught it years ago and placed it in graphic terms. No man is an island in tie of itself. Every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. Then he goes on toward the end to say, any man's death diminishes me, because I am involved in mankind. Therefore never send to know for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee. This is the meaning of having a unified perspective. We are to realize the American dream and make justice a reality.
Thank you, Dr. Ferguson. I have a few questions that we'd like to go through this afternoon, especially with your background in light of the words you just spoke. As we ponder, really the theme of this discussion is, justice isn't just how do you define true justice, and how can it be achieved in a society where diverse backgrounds and beliefs all come together?
Well, certainly, thank you for that question. I would define true justice as complete justice in every facet, in every area. It really is the establishment of a society in which all individuals are treated with dignity and treated with fairness and respect and equality. And I envision a world where all races and backgrounds can live together in harmony and mutual respect. It involves the elimination of systemic racism and discrimination, and it really involves coming together to make a difference. When we eliminate these things and we provide access and resources and opportunities for all, and we foster a culture of empathy, we foster a culture of understanding and respect. And so I would say ultimately true justice really aims to create a society where every individual, regardless of their background, their race, religion, political affiliation, is treated equal and fairly. So that would be my piece. Certainly there are different areas of justice, but it all comes down to social justice. But we also look at economic justice, criminal justice, environmental justice. And when we bring all these things together, this is what really allows us to make a difference. So as I stated earlier, we have to bring these things together as it relates to joining forces in all backgrounds coming together to make a difference.
Thank you for that. And I think one of the things that really stands out is that there's many domains of justice. Sometimes we've been focused on some and maybe not others, but as time goes on, we realize that those injustices can exist in many forms and matters, and all of which are important to represent a true justice.
Absolutely.
Dr. Ferguson, in your opinion, what are the most significant barriers to achieving justice for all? And how can individuals and communities work together to overcome those obstacles?
There are certain barriers and still barriers that exist today. Oftentimes we find manipulation of voting and rights and acts, but at the end of the day, it comes down to the law. Really, the law is what dictates justice, and sadly, there are two types of laws. There are just laws, and there are certainly unjust laws, like Jim Crow laws. So what we have to understand, I would be the first to advocate obeying just laws. One has not only a legal, but a moral responsibility to obey just laws. Conversely, I believe that one has a moral responsibility to disobey unjust laws. And so we may get into that later, but the laws and the policies that are written, they are written by our legislators, whom we elect. So one of the barriers that may be self-inflicted, because we certainly have to vote. Many people have fought very religiously to have the right to vote. Now we have the right to vote, and oftentimes we still do not vote. So that is a barrier because we have to elect people in those positions who will stand for justice. But in spite of all that is going on in our government, I would certainly say that it really comes down to us. It comes down to the individuals. It comes down to the communities because it begins with us. It begins with you. It begins and affects your local community. So voting across the board in every election is necessary. We must also build, we must also offer and engage in programs that strengthen our communities. And we have to communicate. That is another piece that we just oftentimes won't do. And oftentimes it's because of fear, but we have to communicate more effectively so that we might gain a greater understanding of each other, so that we might work together to make a justice reality for all.
Thank you for that. One of the things I think is really important in there is the acknowledgement that not all laws are just. Although they may be legal, they may not necessarily be just. How do you see the role of nonviolent resistance in the pursuit of justice, and what lessons can be learned from your experience during the civil rights?
Well, certainly nonviolence is paramount. In my opinion, nonviolent resistance, I've always believed and encouraged. It is a powerful tool based in love. Now, when Rosa Parks decided that she wasn't going to take it any longer and she stayed on the bus seat, she was refusing to abide by the unjust Jim Crow law. And so we formed the Montgomery Improvement Association, and we used nonviolence as the basis for what we were doing. 50,000 Black men and women refused absolutely to ride the city buses, and we peacefully walked together for 381 days. And we did that until the Supreme Court of our nation rendered the decision that segregation and public transportation was unconstitutional. When we were in Birmingham, we faced the water hoses, we faced the tear gas, we faced the billy clubs, but we were successful because we used our nonviolent resistant platform. Now, certainly we could have responded with violence, but the thing is, they know what to do with violence. Had we done so, they could call out the state militia, they could call out the National Guard and kill hundreds and hundreds of innocent people and argue that they were inciting a riot. They know what to do with violence, but they've proven over and over again that they don't know what to do with nonviolence. We were in Birmingham. We won with nonviolence. The following year, Selma, Alabama, we won with nonviolence. So in each of these areas, in each of these demonstrations and protests, we won with nonviolence. And I still believe that nonviolence will work today. But I believe that it is significant that many people are not aware of the nonviolent methods and principles. So I think that one of the things that we certainly need to do is come together, unite forces, join forces, and get a great education on what nonviolence is and make it a part of our lives.
I think that's a really key point when we think of when we had these marches, when we had these demonstrations, we were not doing so alone. This was not in a vacuum. It gave others an opportunity to partake in and participate in and support these protests. And it helped us to create a platform where others could grow both empathy and understanding. Can you tell me in your thoughts, how can we promote greater empathy and understanding among different racial, ethnic, and socioeconomic groups to create more just and equitable societies?
I really believe that it's through communication. I believe that we often don't communicate, and I believe it begins with fear. I believe people fear each other because they don't know each other, and they don't know each other because they don't communicate with each other. And oftentimes they don't communicate with each other because they're separated from one another. So I believe that it's necessary that there be dialogue, there be communication to get better understanding and empathy. People really don't know your background, your feelings, the way that you operate in certain circumstances, because they really don't know you and haven't taken the time and the effort and the energy to do that. So I think things such as this program, other programs which really get us into a conversation and a dialogue where we will understand. Now, I remember a study circles group that we had, and this is a great a piece that will help if you would do this in your communities. But we had a study circles group program, and we had about, I'd say about 60 people, and we broke it down into groups of 5. And we met for 12 weeks. They met for 12 weeks, and they discussed and they talked. And we made sure that each group was diverse. There were people from different backgrounds in each group. And they began to conversate and dialogue and talk about their cultures and backgrounds so that each other could get a better understanding. And what we realized after 12 weeks is that we have a lot in common. Matter of fact, we realized that we had about 80% in common and about 20% were differences. But the problem that we found is that we tend to focus on our differences to the point where they outshine our commonalities. And so I think by coming together, communicating, dialogue, and really working together, get a better understanding of each other would really be a big piece of making justice a reality for all.
Especially in light of understanding, what are your thoughts on the importance of education and dialogue and breaking down those barriers and fostering a sense of justice and fairness in our communities as we think of it starts with communication?
Absolutely. It starts with communication, and education is really paramount. In fact, one of the first steps in dealing with injustices is education. When we had our demonstrations, I know there were really 4 basic steps. It was collection of the facts to determine whether injustices exist, negotiation, self-purification, and direct action. And so we made sure that we educated ourselves to make sure this was something that needed to be worked on. Uh, but we must educate ourselves on our history. Uh, it's pretty difficult to know where you are going if you're not you don't know where you've been and you haven't been educated on where you have been. So we have to educate ourselves on what's going on in around us, and then we must educate ourselves on the solutions that are available in our communities to help bring about justice. So the education piece is very important, to educate ourselves. Education in school as well, but education really helps us to discern and distinguish the difference between right and wrong, the difference between the false and the fiction, the true and the false. Because certainly we know there's much propaganda, there are many media outlets who have misinformation, and we glean from those things that are not even right. But if we are educated, we understand when we hear these things, we know we can distinguish whether they're true or false. So education certainly is a vital part of making this total justice, bringing about total justice.
Thank you, Dr. Ferguson. As I contemplate that, I also think around education, not just for us, but also for the next generation. How can we inspire and mobilize younger generations to continue to fight for justice and equality in today's world?
It's going right back to what you just said. And I think the first piece is educating young people, making sure that they are educated on their history. When young people understand their history and they understand the challenges that come with change, and can see and understand what their ancestors had to deal with, um, in order to give them the opportunities that they have today, they seem to have more of a understanding, a greater understanding of their roles in continuing the fight for justice and equality in today's world. There was a young lady by the name of Amelia Boynton. She was a great part of when we were in Selma, Alabama. And there were some people who were saying, yeah, we stand on the shoulders of these people. And she said something that really resonated with me. She said, get off of my shoulders. She said, I understand what you're saying, but we built the foundation. We laid the foundation, and your job is to build upon the foundation that we have laid. Another way that we can inspire them is really by being an example, by being the example, setting example. You know, young people, they're not too often moved by what you say, but rather what you do. They are inspired by that. They're inspired by getting involved. So what we need to do is inspire them by getting involved in our communities, uh, and getting involved in the churches, civic organizations, and find creative ways to really come together. Education, voting, being involved in these programs that promote justice and equality. And another thing we have to do with our young people is we have to understand that it's important to meet them where they are. We can't utilize a cassette and VCR tape methods when we're living in a digital streaming world. So we certainly have to make the necessary adjustments that the changes call for. So I believe that's the piece. Those are the pieces that we can really inspire and get our young people more involved.
Thank you for that. In your speeches, you often spoke of a beloved community. How do you envision this community in terms of justice and inclusivity, and what steps can we take to create such a community?
I believe it's really kind of what we've been talking about in bringing people together. I look at the beloved community from the aspect of where all people can live together in peace and harmony, where there's no prejudice, there's no discrimination, no one feels a sense of superiority, and no one feels a sense of inferiority, but equality, equal human beings. You know, just the beloved community believes that there's only one race, and that race is the human race. And I believe that if, you know, God wanted us to be separated, he would have put us on different parts of the universe, but he put us all here on this one planet called Earth, and he asked us to work together, to learn to work together. So to answer that question, I believe that it's necessary that we continue to initiate these programs, work, dialogue, conversate, and really get a better understanding of each other. And then we can work together to bring about the results.
Thank you, Dr. Ferguson. So we've talked about society and the youth as in their roles in there, but what role do you believe that government and institutions should play in promoting justice and addressing systemic inequalities?
I certainly believe that the government has its role in promoting justice in the institution, seeing as how it is what our nation was built upon. One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So this is from the government, and this is what the government should be tending to. And there are many areas that we could talk about where we feel that they should be a part of justice. But to be very honest with you, at the end of the day, it's really up to us. They represent us. We have to hold those who we vote for accountable. I believe there are three pieces to elections. I believe that certainly you have to register to vote to make sure you're eligible, and then you have to vote. But at the end of the day, you have to make sure those that you have voted for, you have to hold them accountable. And that's a big piece that sometimes we don't do. We elect people into office and then we allow them to do differently from what we thought they would do when we elected them. But we have to really hold them accountable and make sure that's necessary in order for us to move forward.
I think that puts a lot of proper focus back on where that responsibility starts. So how do individuals from different walks of life come together to promote justice and equality, even when some of those individuals may not be directly affected by the injustice faced by others?
Absolutely. We live in a world where we have diverse backgrounds. We're different in many ways, but we're similar as it relates to humanity. We're all human beings. So I believe that if we really look at it from whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly perspective, we'll get a better understanding of the necessity of working together to make life better for all. So though I may not be directly affected from it, I am indirectly affected because I'm a part of humanity. So as I said before, I can't be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. And you can never be what you ought to be until I am what I ought to be. And to say again, to quote John Donne, the great poet, English poet, and he caught that thing years ago, and he just really placed it in those graphic terms that no man is an island in time of itself, but every man's a piece of the continent. Every man is a part of the main. And so we have to look at it from a unified perspective. And if we can do that and look at it from a humanity perspective, we'll be able to make the necessary adjustments and work together for that cause.
Thank you. As I think through the discussion so far, we've defined justice, we've defined our role in helping to promote justice, but how do you believe a society can ensure that justice is applied universally and without bias or discrimination?
We have to continue to stand for it. We have to continue to fight for it. We have to continue to work for it because that's really what it's going to take. And when I think about the movement and all the things that we had to deal with and confront, it was a great challenge. But when you have people from diverse backgrounds working on different areas, you're able to bring those things together. It is a process. It does not absolutely come overnight. The civil rights movement was 13 years. And in the year 2024, we're still dealing with some of the same issues that we dealt with 60 years ago. So I would say that it is a process, but it certainly is going to take all individuals working together in a united effort to really bring this about. And the understanding piece that we talked about earlier, understanding one another, dialogue and conversations. I believe all these things work together to fight and to apply universal justice without bias or discrimination.
Wholeheartedly agree, Dr. Ferguson. In your experience and looking back over, as you mentioned, things that we were dealing with over 60 years ago, in your experience during the civil rights movement, what were the most effective strategies for promoting equal treatment under the law for all citizens?
I would say the most effective strategies were the nonviolent piece that we put together. That was the greatest work that we did from the nonviolent perspective, direct action, boycotts, sit-in movements, marches. They were very, very effective. As you know, as I spoke of before, the bus boycott, it took us 381 days. But this method allowed us to, we returned to the buses on a non-segregated basis. And this wasn't just a local victory, this was a national victory. This was really a victory for America. The sit-in movements, when we were in North Carolina, when we, and all throughout the South, we would sit in. And, but we did it all in a loving manner, in a peaceful and loving manner. We would sit in, we would get abused, milk poured on our heads, flour, and but we worked through it in a peaceful manner. The marches, as you know, the March on Washington in August of 1963. It was very not long after the march in 63, which in 64, the Civil Rights Bill was signed into law. We went to Selma. In 1965, we marched across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. You may be familiar with Bloody Sunday, all the things that we did that worked from a nonviolent perspective. These were the greatest strategies because in every instance, we were able to be successful in bringing about justice in that area.
So thank you there, Dr. Ferguson. As I listen through your response, one of the key things that keeps coming out is action, albeit peaceful and nonviolent, but action, 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 making sure that we're not waiting for someone else to come and rescue us, but we have to actively take a role in pursuing justice.
Absolutely.
How do you think individuals can challenge that? If I think through examples of your experiences where the application of universal justice led to significant positive change for marginalized communities, how do I think through that?
Significant change, oftentimes biases are unconscious, and we don't realize that we're being biased because we live in this world where it has become the norm in many instances. I would say self-awareness, recognizing and acknowledging your own biases. This requires certainly self-reflection, a willingness to confront the issues, to confront uncomfortable truths about your own beliefs and your own attitudes. Education, as we spoke of earlier, is a vital part of that piece, seeking to understand the root causes of bias and prejudices and their impact really on individuals and society. Also, we have to engage in learning activities like reading books and taking courses and attending workshops and programs that really focus on diversity, equality, and inclusion. And then another piece is exposure to diversity. We need to actively seek out opportunities where we interact with people from different backgrounds and different cultures, and building those relationships with individuals who are different from you can help challenge stereotypes and really broaden your perspective.
So thank you for that. So as I think through, now we've attacked the biases that challenge the people that we need to help support. Can you share examples of your work and experiences where that application of universal justice led to significant positive change for marginalized communities?
Absolutely. There are many examples, and many that I have mentioned earlier, but it was the application of that universal justice that changes laws. When we look down through history, we can see in different periods where, and as it relates to race relations, but if we look at it in each period, and I would say there were three periods with slavery. We came up to Plessy versus Ferguson. We came up to the Board of Education. We came up to different major pieces of legislation that made a huge difference in bringing about a change. So I think it is the application of the work that comes from the work that we do and where we apply this universal justice that has brought about significant change. The thing about it is people are not accustomed to change, but in every instance, it took a decision by the Supreme Court of our nation to give constitutional validity to the dominant thought pattern of that particular period. And so we are moving into another period, I would say the fourth period now. And so we must continue to work in that area and apply it universally.
Thank you for that. Very insightful. How do we address and combat systemic racism and discrimination within our legal systems and institutions to promote universal justice, especially in light of the reliance on that same system to help make it law and to help promote universal justice?
Absolutely, and you said it right there, the reliance that we have on the system. So in order to combat this systemic racism and discrimination, we can't be really rely on the legal system. We do rely in a sense, but we have to put our piece behind that. So I would say that to promote universal justice, certainly, we must continue to work in legislative pieces. Of course, we were talking about voting and making sure we vote for those who are willing to stand up for justice. But what we really need is a restructuring of the legal system. It is out of balance. It is out of kilter. It is out of format. So I think we need to work very diligently and unrelentingly to restructure the legal system and make sure that it is a just system for all individuals.
Thank you. What role do you believe education plays in fostering a greater understanding of the need for justice to be applied universally and without bias?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, the role that education plays a huge role. Matter of fact, I would say it probably plays one of the most important roles in educating ourselves on other people and backgrounds and their ethnicities and their cultures. And when we gain that and foster that greater understanding of need, then we're able to foster greater need for justice. Well, not a greater need, but we are able to bring about justice to a greater degree and to apply it universally. So basically what we have said um, as it relates to the education piece, because there are many areas of education, but I would say educating ourselves on our history, educating ourselves on others' history. And as I've mentioned about the Study Circles program, really getting a better understanding of the different people, the different cultures, what they stand for. And I think when we do that, we'll be able to really apply it universally.
Thank you for that. As we look back to your prior comments around education and where the focus needs to be, how do we inspire the future champion that cause of equal treatment and universal justice, building on the progress made during the civil rights movement?
That is the piece. It is building upon. It is building upon. And I think it's important that we continue to educate our young people. As I said before, young people, they don't look at what you say. They don't pay a lot of attention to what you say, especially when what you say and what you do are not parallel. So we have to be the great examples for our children. We have to educate them. We have to teach them our history, where they came from, some of the challenges that they will face. We have to serve as mentors. That means we have to guide, we have to advise, we have to support our young people and help them along the way so that they will gain this better understanding of their roles in the community and within their communities. And I still would say that the greatest piece is setting that example and being that example for our young people so that they can follow in those footsteps.
Thank you for that. As I think through some of the changes that we've watched over our lifetimes, in your view, what role do media and public figures play in promoting universal justice and raising awareness about the need for equality under the law and within society?
Media and public figures can and should play a vital role in universal justice and raising awareness, but too often this is not the case. Let me begin with media. Media too often writes the narrative and the way they want it to be. Media loves controversy and negativity because they sell. And, you know, media outlets, their goal is to get the ratings and to get the more better ratings they have, the more they can sell to their advertisers. So their concern is not always genuine. It's not a concern for the needs of the people. It's a concern for the needs of the pocket. And so I think that going back to the education piece, when we are educated from valued sources, from truthful sources, we begin to understand um, the intent of the media, and we can work. But I certainly believe that they have a role in making a difference and in putting out that information. But sadly, too often, that's not what they do. As far as those celebrities and those who are in high places and have high platforms, they can do much, and some of them really do. I know when we were at the March on Washington, when we were working in the civil rights movement, Harry Belafonte and several other musicians and celebrities would join us because they knew that their voice could reach a lot of people. So I think it's very important, but I think that we as individuals, as communities, as society, that we have to put a little more on our celebrities and let them know that we believe that they should do it. I know some people say, well, our celebrities, our sports, our athletes, they shouldn't have anything to do with politics. They should just do what they do and not get involved. But with that platform, I think it's essential. Muhammad Ali, we could go back for centuries and see the work that people have done to make a difference in our community. So yes, I think it's very vital, media as well as celebrities.
I think that the undercurrent that economic justice and equality plays, especially in light of your comments, is really vital to acknowledge. How do you see that relationship between economic and social justice, and how can we work towards achieving both in our society?
Well, economic justice is vital. Social justice really is the crux of justice. It entails all of those. It entails economic justice as well. And so when we look at the history of America and we see all that is going on, I think that we can work toward a better economic structure by really demanding this. We see from taxes to 1% of America owning the majority, or more than the 99%. When we see things that are not, without going into detail, when we see things that are not right, we have to stand up and we have to speak about it. The late John Lewis would always tell us that we have to stand. If you see something that's wrong, stand up for it and speak out against it. And he said, get into good trouble. And I agree with him on that. But to make the relationship between social justice and economic justice is really they're twins. In a sense, it's probably the most vital part of justice because, we were dealing with poverty, and poverty is a sad reality for America. But yes, the relationship is solid, and I think we need to continue to work diligently toward that.
Thank you for that. What message would you like to share with those who continue to fight for universal justice and equal treatment under the law, especially in the face of ongoing challenges and resistance? This has been a long fight.
It has. It certainly has been a very long fight. And I would say to them, don't give up. Don't give in. Continue to work hard and diligently. The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. No lie can live forever. I would say keep engaging and participating, raising your voice, and always do it from a place of love. I think that would be the most significant piece because we did it from love, from a perspective of love. And let me say briefly that many people, when they hear doing it from the perspective of love and nonviolence, and they say, well, no, I'm not going to turn the other cheek. I don't get down like that. Especially our young people know I'm not going to sit there and let somebody beat on me. But the thing about it is what we have to understand, the love that we're talking about is not an affectionate type love. Greek philosophy comes to our aid at this point. There are three words in the Greek language for love. One of them is the word eros. Eros is a sort of aesthetic love. Philosopher Plato talks about it a great deal in his dialogues. It's a yearning of the soul for the realm of divine. So it has come to us to mean a sort of romantic love. So we all know about eros. We've experienced it. We've read about it in the beauties of literature. In a sense, Edgar Allan Poe was talking about eros when he talked about his beautiful Annabel Lee with the love surrounded by the halo of eternity. In a sense, Shakespeare was talking about eros when he said, love is not love, which alters when alteration forms or bends with the remover to remove. It is an ever fixed mark, which looks on tempest and is never shaken. It is a star to every wandering bark. That's eros. But then the Greek language talks about philia, which is another level of love. It's an intimate affection between personal friends. On this level, we love because we are love. We love people that we like. This is friendship. But then the Greek language talks about agape. Agape is more than friendship. Agape is not something affectionate. Agape is an understanding, a creative, redemptive goodwill to all men. It's an overflowing love that seeks nothing in return. Theologians would say that it is a love of God operating in the human heart. And so when one rises to love on this level, he loves man not because he likes him, but he loves every man because God loves him and he was created in the image of God. And so he goes on with that. He rises to the level of hating the system rather than the individual who is caught up in that system. He loves the person, even though he may hate the evil deed. And so I understand how challenging it can be, but I certainly believe that in some not too distant future, that the radiant star of justice will shine above our great nation, and we will be able to live in that community, which I always believe in, the beloved community. So that would be my words toward those who are continuing the work. And thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ferguson. One more question for you. What message would you like to share with those who continue to strive for justice and equality in the face of ongoing challenges and setbacks?
Yes, sir. So that would certainly be the message to continue to work. Continue. You're going to be faced with challenges, but we know in society and in life that we have challenges and that we have to work to overcome those challenges. So I would say just try not to be discouraged, but understand what was done before your time, and that if it was done then, it can be done today. So keep working hard. Don't let anything deter you. Do it in love and work to understand individuals who are not like yourself so that you can work together. That's what it's going to take, working together for the beloved community.
Thank you, Dr. Ferguson, for your thoughts this afternoon. Would like to open it back up to DeWanda to close us out.
This has been awesome. I thank you both so much for just the awesome discussion. Thank you, Dr. Ferguson, in the spirit of Dr. Martin Luther King, for coming, having a speech prepared, answering those questions. I do have one question that was in the remarks here,
Okay.
and it says, and I'll paraphrase, there's a vast gap in home ownership in our community versus other communities. What do you feel is our biggest roadblock today that prevents us from progressing forward like we see in other communities?
I really think that it's dealing with economic. The wealth gap has been tremendous, and oftentimes has been continued to be a gap. And the wealth gap in individuals and families are not able to afford um, afford housing. There are low income housing opportunities, but I think it really deals with what we were speaking about earlier, the economic piece, and really delving into that economic piece, and where we were talking about how 1% of Americans pretty much own the world, I mean, the nation. But in order to bring about a difference in that, I think that we have to really work with our government, the housing, and really look deep into what it is that we need to do within ourselves. I always think of what looking inside before we even go outside. So I would say to really work with our legislators who write the laws. In 1968, there was a Fair Housing Act that was passed because we see a lot of discrimination. We see a lot of that within the housing industry, and a lot of it has to do with that, and not allowing people who are qualified to access mortgages and things of that nature. So I think we have to take that really from a local perspective and begin to work with our local government agencies and see the reasoning behind that in our particular governments and in our local governments, and really speak with them and talk to them and allow them to work on ways. Employment has a lot to do with it, and finding work. So I think there's a plethora of things that we need to look at, but I think the policies for housing within in America needs restructuring, and we need to call out any kind of um, discrimination that we see within that context. So it's a broad scope, but at the end of the day, it's going to be about our legislators and ourselves, as far as we were talking about during this piece, is really working together when we see those injustices and to make them correct.
Listen, that was powerful. You also said something that really resonated with me, and it starts with a conversation. And I think this was one of those conversations, right? And then I think based on everything that you've said, the comments that are in the chat, just the hunger that we have as a people to see justice and equality, right? I think we need to continue this conversation. And so there are some folks in the chat, and I'm calling you out, Ryan, that we're going to continue this conversation, and we're going to not only talk, but we're going to put in some action. So from these conversations, we need a call to action or actions, right? Because it's like you said, a plethora of things that we can do. And so as your last statement, what would be your call to action for us today?
My call to action would be really to continue the work that you are doing. My call to action would be to, there are so many things. I would say one of the problems that we have is the bias that we were talking about, but I would say look inward, look at self. What is it that I'm doing, or what is it that I'm not doing that could really make a difference in educating ourselves and all of the things that we mentioned earlier. So my call to action would be to go out and continue the work, strive for the work, work hard, and don't allow anything to stop you. That is oftentimes a lot of people will get out there and they become discouraged, and then they give up. But I would say to continue the work. Don't let anything stop you. Educate yourself on what's going on, and really work together. That communication piece that you mentioned, I think that's very essential. I would challenge you and charge you to conversate and begin to work with other people who you don't don't understand their background, culture. Really get to that understanding, because once you do that, you'll be at a place where you can really make a huge difference, because numbers mean a lot.
Thank you so much. Well, there you have it, the network family. Our call to action is to continue this conversation, put in some plans of action, go out there, do the work, and it all starts with a conversation. And so with that, I want to conclude our 2024 MLK CAFÉ Conversation. Justice is not just us. Phenomenal moderator, absolutely wonderful speaker. I thank them both for giving us their time on today. February is right around the corner, and we have a lot of impactful items, events, programs that you can partake in. Kicking off February 1st, here is our UNCF scholarship kickoff. It will be virtual and live, hosted right here in Dallas, Texas, with our guest speakers from UNCF. We have Maurice Jenkins, and then with AT&T, we have Shabeth Okana. She is one of our very own mentors and advisors. So we're very, very happy that she was able to help us kick off this event. A mind is a terrible thing to waste, and we are so excited to help raise dollars to send children to school. And although it is UNCF, um, any child can apply. They do not have to go to an HBCU, although we do recommend you go to an HBCU, but I think the qualifications are just a 4-year accredited college or university. And then we'll have a special guest artist, and we'll have a student who has graduated from UNCF, and he'll come back and just talk about the impact that the scholarship has had on his life to encourage other students. And of course, pull on the heartstrings for you to donate. You can register using the QR code there. And again, that is February 1st at 11:30 Central Standard Time. It is live here in Dallas, so if you're in a neighborhood, go on and register, come through. Otherwise, catch us online. We'll definitely have the link that you can share and donate for, even if you are not able to attend. And then we will have our Mindful Mondays hosted by yours truly. I will be going through breathing techniques and how to release and let go, right? We'll have Get Fit Fridays, and so we'll have an instructor going through how to get fit. We also have another event by our talent development team, Get Ready, Stay Ready, and it is Get Your Seat at the Table. And I apologize if I'm messing up the name, but I know it's Seat at the Table. You deserve a seat at the table. And so you don't want to miss those events. And again, Mindful Mondays, Get Fit Fridays, all of that is to help you stay fit and aware. All right, again, thank you so very much. At this time, I am going to stop the recording. Thank you all for coming. Be blessed. See you later.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a good one.
You too. Thank